Welcome to the Deal Finder Corner. So this is your weekly property talk show brought to you by Property Filter, hosted by myself, Guillaume Black, your favorite Frenchman. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Property Filter. As you know, it's the highest rated platform to find deals, and we're on a mission to empower our property investor and deal finder and deal sourcer members to find another 1,000 deals this year, thanks to the Property Filter blueprint. So the purpose with the Deal Finder Corner is to give you more and the best of the available resources by inviting expert guests who will share with you the latest and most current strategies, tactics, and secrets of what actually works right now in terms of finding and making deals and the reality of systemizing and running a high-performance business in property. So it's my unique and immense pleasure to introduce to you my very good friend Ranjan Bhattacharya on today's Deal Finder Corner. So Ranjan needs no introduction. He's a property mentor, author, property YouTuber, TV personality. He's one of the most accomplished and respected property entrepreneurs in the UK. Over the last 30 years, he's built an extensive portfolio of residential and commercial property. And through Ranjan's numerous property companies, he specializes in repurposing commercial buildings to create high cash flowing, optimal cash flowing, assets for long-term rental. Ranjan's latest project is a 10,000 square foot serviced apartment and business center, providing flexible co-working space in the heart of St. Albans, and I'm glad I've been and seen the building a few times, which is really nicely done. Ranjan is a very sought after speaker at the majority of our industry events and a regular contributor for all press related, and especially all things property, really, on paper press or online media outlets in the property space. So he's highly regarded for his commercial property expertise, and is the UK's leading provider of commercial real estate training and mentoring for property entrepreneurs. So I'm really looking forward to having Ranjan and listening to Ranjan today. What can we expect from today's episode? So Ranjan will take us through how to navigate and make the most of the perfect storm there is today in the commercial sector, from a high supply of commercial property, combined with a locked financial markets within a very dynamic PD right change. So lots happening. So today you'll not just keep up, but really stay on top of the commercial opportunities. So without further ado, I'm very much looking forward to hearing more of Ranjan talk today. So please give a massive Property Filter virtual welcome to Mr. Ranjan Bhattacharya. Thank you.
Wow, what a welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, welcome.
So what I'm going to talk about today, and hopefully we'll have some Q&As afterwards, and you guys can pose me questions and the like, is this perfect storm that we talked about in the introduction, this perfect storm of opportunity. It's opportunity because there is an abundant supply of commercial property. Commercial property, for a whole bunch of reasons, is actually falling in value. And the opportunity is created by permitted development rights, allowing you to convert these buildings easily into residential units where we're simply not keeping up with demand. And those permitted development rights are great, but they are getting even greater during the course of 2024, creating even more opportunities than we have already. And what I've always found, I did my first commercial conversion in 2006. I converted the rear of a shop on the Holloway Road in Islington into a flat, and that was under full planning permission. And I've been doing commercial conversions the hard way in those days, under full planning permission, and planning permission is an absolute pain in the ass. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing in 2013 was when the PD rights first came in for converting commercial buildings into residential use. And since then, it's just got better and better. So this is, if you've done anything with planning permission, permitted development is a breeze. I simply avoid planning permission projects these days. And what I've always found is that there's the people that do best out of PD are the ones who take first mover advantage. When something is new, the people who are straight out of the gates, knowing exactly what to do and how to exploit the new opportunities, do the best. Because it takes at least 18 months for the market to generally acknowledge what can be done. So first mover advantage is how I've always done well, keeping abreast of the regulations and the new developments and identifying opportunities before the rules have come into place, keeping ahead of the curve. There was a great opportunity for that in 2013 with the first round of PD, in 2021 as well, and we're also seeing these opportunities in 2024. And I'll tell you a little bit about what those opportunities are that you can already start looking out for, particularly with the help of Property Filter and the tools available to you guys there. So there's a lot to play for. I mean, you've had a little bit of an introduction to me, I guess. I'm not going to waffle on too much. I started in 1990. I did a management consulting career. I did property along the side. I've been full-time. I left management consultancy after about 10 years. I've been full-time in property, whatever that means, since 2001. I've done basically property development. I've made blocks of flats and kept them for long-term rental. That's been my strategy. And commercial to residential was a natural thing because my area of focus was pretty much London and home counties. And what I found in the early 2000s was that, quite frankly, the yields weren't really stacking up on single lets anymore. And that really started to happen in the early 2000s. So I didn't want to go up north. For me, up north means Edgware or Cockfosters. That's really as far north as I want to go. So I didn't want to do that. So I thought, well, how can I get the yields that I'm looking for and stay in high value areas, because they give me comfort of capital appreciation over the long term. And what I discovered was by doing commercial conversions and mixed use buildings and taking things like freehold units and putting flats above shops or behind shops, you get a blended yield on the whole building, which is pretty much like it was in the 1990s. So that's why I got into commercial conversions. And as I said, I did my first one in 2006. Now, of course, even blended yields don't work in London pretty much. You do have to be in home counties and outside to make that work. Central London doesn't work anymore. But there's still plenty to be had in all those sort of areas. So that's my bag. Now I pretty much specialize in commercial property buy-to-let, investing through SAS pensions, and also permitted development conversions into residential use. You may have seen me on the Sky Telly show Property Elevator. If you haven't, then scan this code. You'll learn a huge amount from this. It's a show on Sky TV. It's a bit like Dragon's Den, and people come on the show and pitch their property deals for funding. So I'm one of 5 angels that appear on the show. And to tell you the truth, in the last couple of years, a lot of the projects that are pitched to us are commercial to residential conversion deals, because at the end of the day, they offer the greatest uplift in terms of profit and also the shortest time to get out. Because when you're dealing with new build, you're pretty much dealing with planning permission, which can take you a couple of years to get, and then you're building from the ground out. So it can be 3-4 years before you have an exit. With permitted development projects, the building already exists. You've got the foundations, walls, windows, roofs, everything exists. And it takes 56 days to get the consent. And because the fabric of the building is there, it's internal reconfiguration. So the project, we started one project just now, 4 flats we're making out of an office, small office. And that's strip out started last week, and it's a 4.5 month build. You can't do that with new build. So it's not a surprise that the most juiciest deals presented on the show have been the commercial to residential conversions. If you want to get an idea and learn a lot of how 5 different angel investors analyze these deals, you can binge watch season 6. We've just shot season 7, and that will be on the telly in June. And again, you can watch that on my YouTube as well. I also run a property meet. It's the largest property meet in the UK. We get 300 people turn up to each event. We are now in our 9th year doing the Baker Street Property Meet. Our next event is Tuesday, 30th of April. There's a small typo in that year, so it is 2024. I've just noticed that. I'll have to correct the folks on that one. YouTube, we do a lot on YouTube. We're putting out 3 videos a week at the moment. We will be increasing that to 5 videos a week very, very shortly, with some very exciting shows in collaboration with some very interesting property personalities that we're putting out there. We're now getting 300,000 views a month on YouTube. So if you want to be kept up to date with all things property, make sure you subscribe to the Succeed in Property YouTube channel. As I said, we're over 67,000 subscribers now and 300,000 views a month. Okay, so we're going to talk about commercial to resi, and I personally have done a lot of banks. A lot of the case studies I'm going to talk about are banks. Banks are shutting down at a rapid pace, and quite frankly, by 2028, I don't think we'll have any left in the UK. We have put together a list of over 500 bank branches which are shutting down in high streets up and down the country, and you can get this database for free. You can use Property Filter to kind of check them out a little bit, and you can find out who owns them and mail shop them, you know, and target those sort of opportunities. Several people have written to me and said, thanks to this banks list, I've actually sourced a property deal, a former bank in my area. So you can get that for free. 500 plus bank branches which are shutting down over the next couple of years up and down the land. So you can find a deal. You can find a deal, basically. There are plenty to be had out there. We're soon going to be putting out a list of betting shops. There are more than 1,000 betting shops shutting down, and those are a good bet. That was a joke, by the way. There's another. I'll come on to that later. Okay, so commercial to residential. You know, it is a interesting. There's certain reasons why this is working. There's a massive oversupply of commercial property. We've had COVID. We've had a change in business practices. There are very, very few retail shops where products are being sold off the shelves. That's all done online. So it's service sector only. So we don't need as many shops as we have right now. Things like betting and banking has changed. So they do not need shops anymore. For some reason, the population of the UK is growing a lot more hair than they used to. There are a lot more barber shops on the high streets. You know, you can't cut hair on the internet yet. You can't drink coffee on the internet. You can't do your nails on the internet. So all of these service sector businesses is what's growing on the high street, but there isn't the need for the square footage of space that there currently is out there. Office space has shrunk dramatically. I mean, one story I'll share with you. We did a recent rent review on an office tenant, and basically the rent had nearly doubled for that space. So what the tenant said to us is that can we just take half the space? And the reason why this business had been in there for more than 15 years, and the reason why is that they only need half the space now, because in the old days they needed filing cabinets for all the documents. The desks used to be bigger because all the monitors used to be that deep. You know, now, you know, everyone's got flat screens, they've got no documents, the desks are smaller. So when they did an office refit, they found they needed physically less space. So they're all, apart from COVID, hybrid working and all of that, the tech has meant that there is less need for physical office space now than at previous times. That, as well as interest rates, because remember, commercial property is valued completely differently to residential property. Residential property is bricks and mortar. Commercial property is about a yield-based valuation. And the yield outlook on a commercial property is very, very much dependent on the interest rate. if interest rate, if you can only earn 0.5% on your money in the bank, then if you are renting out a commercial property and earning 4 or 5% yield on it, then that's a good return. You're doing quite well compared to the interest that you're earning in the bank. So if interest rates go up, which they have, and you can get more on cash deposits in the bank, I mean, you can safely get 4.5%, 5% on money in the bank these days. So obviously, if you're going to take the risk and own a commercial property, which is as an investment, then you're going to demand a higher return than having the money in the bank. So as interest rates have gone up, the yield expectations on commercial investments have gone up, and therefore the higher the yield that people expect, the lower the value of that commercial real estate is. So we have this oversupply anyway, and supply demand means that prices, come down a little bit. And we also have this massive issue of yield-based valuations, meaning that commercial property is relatively cheap. You only have to look at some of the auction data, Allsops and all of that for commercial auctions. It's not great. It's not great for commercial property. Particularly if it's being sold as a commercial property just for commercial sake. If there's any residential conversion opportunity, then it's a different ballgame. So as a result, there's been a massive fall in commercial property values, and that is likely to continue. We have had a very, very modest drop in residential property values. Now, I know everyone looks at prices on residential property, and you see that prices have gone up. But when you actually look at inflation-adjusted house prices for the last 10 years, they basically haven't moved, and they've come down a tad. And residential values have still held simply because of the supply-demand imbalance. So what we are looking at is quite a little opportunity to take commercial property and convert it to residential use. Because when you look at values per square foot, commercial property is a third or a quarter of the value per square foot, price per square foot as residential property. So if you can take that commercial property and apply permitted development rights to it, you can generate a massive uplift in value. And one of the fascinating things about commercial property is that vacant commercial units are worth even less than occupied commercial units. Now, that doesn't work with residential property. If you've got a residential property, it doesn't matter whether it's empty or tenanted or who the tenant is, it's still worth the same amount of money because it's a bricks and mortar valuation. With commercial property, if it's empty, it's worth even less, because when people invest in commercial property, they're investing in an income stream. So who the tenant is very important. And if they're a blue chip tenant, that's better than a mom and pop. If it's a long lease, that's better than if it's a short flaky lease. So these sort of issues, who the tenant is and whether it's occupied or not, doesn't factor into residential property, but it does into commercial property. So the thing is to look for vacant commercial units and convert them to residential use. Now, I'm not saying convert all the space into residential use. I'm saying take a commercial unit and think, what is the optimum value per square foot I can get from every inch of that space? So if you're using a mixed use building, it may well be that the front of the shop should stay a shop, because that will give you the best return. The upper parts or the rear, you may get a much better return by converting that into residential use. So what we'd pretty much like to do is to secure the site. We secure the site. These days, my favorite option is conditional exchange. Because because permitted development is a checklist system. by looking at a property, by having the knowledge, you know whether or not it fits the template to get the permission for residential conversion. So knowing it fits the template, then we will just do an exchange or a conditional exchange. Occasionally you do an option, but mostly it's exchange. Then you apply for the permission, which takes 56 days. And if the council don't get back to you in 56 days, there is deemed consent. That allows you to complete on the purchase of the building. Now, completing on the purchase of the building with consent for residential conversion means that gives you much more flexibility in raising finance to complete on the purchase, short-term bridging finance and also development finance to do the conversion works, because you've actually got the permission in place. And then simply do the thing, do the build out, get them let, which is relatively straightforward, and refinance on long-term buy-to-let type of mortgage. And if there's enough margin in there, and by a margin I'm talking about at least 40% uplift, then you can exit finance, leaving a very, very small amount of your money tied up in the deal. Usually, you know, occasionally you get something with no money left in, but typically we're under 10% funds left in the deal at the end of the project, with a project making positive cash flow. But when you look at the return, the rental returns on the funds we have invested in the project, those are typically 25% plus by doing this sort of model. So permitted development, as I mentioned in my intro, in 2013, we had the first round of permitted development that allowed offices and shops to be converted into residential use. And again, the most fun to be had was in 2013 to about 2016. That's when people really didn't know what was going on. After that, it became more common knowledge. And there was still plenty to be had, because I've done commercial to residential conversions in every single year since 2006. So there's still opportunity in any year. But after 2016, once a lot of it became common knowledge, what that means is the basics become common knowledge. So you have to be clever about the application of the rules to make your money from the not so obvious. The great thing about commercial property is that what you can do with it is not obvious. If I present to you a vacant 3-bedroom end of terrace, anyone who's watched Sarah Beanie or Homes Under the Hammer has got a rough idea what you can do with a 3-bedroom end of terrace. Now, you have to have a lot of knowledge in order to have the vision to figure out what you can do with an old bank, and what spaces are best suited for what type of use. So commercial properties, I mean, the value is often in the eyes of the beholder. And often I have bought properties. I mean, I've bought a lot of properties from auction, and that's simply because I know what can be done under the permitted development rules. And where one guy is thinking, you know what, I could do a couple of flats here, I'm thinking could do 3 or 4. You know, so if I know I can get a higher GDV than the next guy, then I've got a better plan than the next guy for that commercial property, and therefore I can pay more for that property, win the deal, and get it. So that's really my secret for winning at auctions: knowing the rules, knowing what can be done, being the highest, because in auctions you are the highest bidder, and you are the highest bidder. Sometimes, you know, some people are the highest bidder because they've been stupid, they've overpaid for stuff, you know, but I'm the highest bidder because when I've got a better plan than the next guy for the end GDV of that property, then I can afford to pay a bit more for it because my margins aren't impacted. And I find the best opportunity to do that with is commercial property, because with residential property, the end GDV of what you can do with that property is pretty much obvious to most people, whereas with commercial property it isn't. 2020, we had a massive shake-up with PD, which was massive actually, which allowed, and this happened right in the middle of COVID, so it didn't really get much traction until after COVID lockdown ended. But it allowed commercial properties to be repurposed to other commercial uses. Before 2020, we had an archaic system of commercial property usage classes. So you couldn't make an old newsagent into a restaurant without having planning permission. But now they've created this usage class E, and you can convert any building in usage class E to any other use within that usage class. So an office can become a gym can become a dentist surgery, a bank can become a restaurant, and you can switch between those uses without any need for planning. So this is important because when you are buying a property, like for example, I mentioned these, you've got this list of 500 banks. We've got a site at the moment whereby the bottom part of the building, the former bank building, the bottom part is best used as commercial. But we're not going to get another bank to occupy it. We've let it to a Greek restaurant. Now, they don't have to go through any planning to get that change of use because it's all within the same usage class. Banks, restaurants, are all within the same usage class. So that means when you get a former commercial building, you can repurpose part or all of it to residential. But if you want to keep some of it as commercial, you can repurpose it to other commercial uses without going through change of use planning for that. So that was a very powerful change. It gives commercial owners a lot more flexibility. And in 2021, they expanded the PD rights to basically say any Class E usage building you can now convert to residential, subject to some restrictions, but that's any sort of shops, banks, restaurants, gyms, offices can now be converted into residential use. That was a massive change. But there's still more to come. This month, I mean, I don't know how many people have actually noticed this stuff, but on the 5th of March, we had a major change to the PD rules. Before 5th of March this year, you could only convert up to 1,500 square meters of a commercial building to residential use. That upper limit has been abolished. So that means, you know, that if you've got a larger office building and you want to make 50 flats out of it, you can do so now. Before, you had to do a lot of jiggery pokery to do that. And the other thing that's changed from 5th of March this year is the vacancy test has been removed. This was a right pain in the ass, and this opens up so many new opportunities, because up till 5th of March, you had to, if you bought a property that was tenanted, you had to wait until the commercial tenant moved out. You then have to wait until it's vacant for 3 months before you can apply for permitted development to convert to residential. The PD would take 56 days, so you're 6 months away with an empty property before you can start works. Now there's no vacancy test anymore. You know, we've already put in one application based on the vacancy test rules so far. It's only coming on the 5th of March. We've got another application we're putting in next month based on this new vacancy test removal thing, which is massive. There's still more to come. There was a consultation paper put out late last year, and in that consultation paper, the government proposed to do some massive things, 2 of which they've implemented on the 5th of March. The rest are still to come. One of them is that to remove restrictions in conservation areas. So as long as you don't change the external envelope of the building, you're good to go, whether it's in a conservation area or not, apart from if it's a listed building, of course. We have a permitted development right at the moment, which allows for 2 flats to be created above a shop. That is proposed to be increased to 4 flats. You know, we've got properties within our portfolio where we've got 3 floors above a shop. Under current rules, we can only do 2 flats. So it means one of the flats is a massive maisonette. So we're waiting for this rule to just whack in plans on this straight away, pretty much. New usage class for C1 hotels, boarding houses, guest houses, and all of that, and converting those into C3 usage. So if you get a former boarding house, converting this to residential use is going to be a very, very interesting thing. There's still a lot of these Basel faulty towers type small guest houses, which are uneconomic today. Now, if you think about all the types of commercial buildings that exist, hotels, boarding houses, they're the only type of commercial building where people sleep. No one sleeps in an MOT test garage or, a bank, apart from some of the staff, of course. But no one generally sleeps in those overnight. So what does that mean? It means that these types of buildings are potentially easier to convert to residential in terms of works because they're already there to a large extent. And of course, there's this massive thing that was mooted in the autumn statement last year, which is the first ever PD for residential properties to be subdivided, which is to take houses and convert them into 2 flats or 2 dwellings. So I'd be looking, seriously at identifying plots, houses where you've got at least 100 square meters there, because those will be very, very nice to carve up into 2 substantial dwellings. So there's much, much more to come. Now, the reason why I think you should make sure you are up to date with all this stuff is that it's about making hay when the sun shines. The first movers always win with all these new rules, because the market, it takes 12, 18 months before market auctioneers, other property investors get wind of it all. And also, you've got to remember why permitted development exists. Permitted development exists because the local authorities are crap. Their planning departments are a disgrace. They're dysfunctional. When you submit a planning application, who do you submit it to? You submit it to the Development Control Department. I always think it should be called the Development Enablement Department, but it's not. We've got a housing shortage and it's called Development Control, not Development Enablement. But that's a little hobby horse of mine anyway. But so they don't like it. So government has said, look, you guys are crap. The system's too complicated to change. So we're going to come up with some permitted development rights. And if the applicant meets this criteria, there's nothing you can say about it. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's a way of central government, calling the shots. But there's a mechanism for the local authorities to fight back. And that's the Article 4 mechanism. So the Article 4 mechanism is a way of saying, look, central government, yeah, we get what you're trying to do, but for these reasons, it doesn't apply in, it shouldn't apply in our area. So the local authorities can get their Article 4 and then, you can't do this PD in that area. So it does take at least 12, even if a council wants to apply for permitted development Article 4, they have to put an application in to Michael Gove. He then has to consider it. And even if he grants it, the local authority has to put everyone on 12 months notice that the Article 4 is coming into effect. One of my students in Richmond got a deal which we actually ended up investing in, actually, whereby an Article 4 was coming into place. They'd put everyone on 12 months notice that an Article 4 was coming into place, unless it was coming into place in July. So he bought a shop and he made a 2-bedroom flat at the rear. It had a garden, a separate entrance, fantastic flat, actually. But he got that. What the council do is when they've got an Article 4, they put out all their publicity as though they've actually got it, because they want to discourage people from applying. But the truth of the matter is they've been granted an Article 4, but it doesn't come into effect for 12 months. So my student bought that shop. He got the PD literally 3 weeks before the Article 4 came into force. And he was the last person in Richmond to get permission for this flat at the back of the shop. So this doesn't happen for at least 12 months. So that's why when new rules come in, keep abreast of them, understand how you can fully exploit them, and make hay while the sun shines. With Article 4s, by the way, Michael Gove has overturned 18 Article 4s across the country over the last 18 months. So, and some people don't know this. Some people don't know that, you know, in this particular area, actually, this Article 4 has been overturned. It doesn't apply anymore. So that's fantastic. I mean, there's one particular area that we're negotiating on a deal right now, where the Article 4 got revoked just a month ago. But the perception is that the Article 4 is still in place. The council doesn't put out any publicity. It's up to you to know that. Quite excited about that. So first mover advantage, I'll just share with you a couple of deals we did last time there was major changes. So in 2021, we had the Class G permitted development, which allows 2 flats above a shop, and Class MA, which allows us offices to be converted to residential use. So these were the rules came in on the 31st of July. We had these planning apps in August, and at that time, no one knows what they're doing. The councils don't know how to oppose them. I remember with this planning application, for example, we couldn't pay the planning fee online because it was so new to them. They hadn't updated their website. They asked for a check for the planning fee. I didn't know where the hell my checkbook was for that company account. It took me a couple of days to get, but it was that so fresh that the council haven't even got it on their website to take the fee, let alone know how to deal with it. And that is a lovely place to be for this first mover advantage. So this is where a nice simple little project, 2 bedroom flats above a shop, job done. This one is again a Class MA deal, and this actually represents here's a tip. I mean, I've talked about banks. This is a type of commercial building which is you're going to find lots of vacant available units up and down the country this year. So stay tuned for more. So this was the upper floors. It's a whole building, but the upper floor it's a TARDIS. It goes back massively with a new extension at the back. We're actually converting the upper parts into 4 one-bedroom flats. With this one, the office used to be the parliamentary constituency office for the Conservative Party. Now, this had been the safe Tory seat for 18 years. The by-election was right in the middle of the Matt Hancock getting too close and personal scandal. And the Conservatives lost that by-election, and this became vacant. And I think this year, there are going to be a lot more Conservative Party parliamentary offices up for grabs. So look out for those in your constituency and convert those into residential use. As an aside, when we applied for planning permission for this, remember I said they have taken off the vacancy test. You don't have to prove it was vacant for 3 months. When we applied for permission for this, the vacancy test was still there. And this is an example of how councils, you've got to know the rules inside out, because the councils will try to oppose you. So they said to us, okay, your PD is okay, but prove to us this building has been unoccupied for 3 months. You're the council, you know who the MP is. I mean, it's ridiculous that they don't know. Of course they know. So we sent them a YouTube link to a Sky News broadcast talking about the loss of the by-election and it was filmed outside this office and all of this sort of stuff. So it was clear cut. Here's your proof of vacancy, a Sky News report, and they couldn't do anything about that. But you don't have to worry about vacancy tests anymore. But what I've always found is first mover advantage is key. We've got a lot happening in 2024 with permitted development, new rules coming in, new opportunities coming in. It's about understanding those rules, knowing what you can fully exploit and getting on and doing it. Because in the first couple of years, you're going to have maximum value out of those things. So just to wrap up then, you've got to look for 40% margin. So what I mean by margin is, well, okay, you've got your cost of buying the property, and you need to get at least a 40% margin in terms of your GDV to make your figures good enough. Now, when I go back to Property Elevator, if I look at series 1, 2, and 3, we were doing deals based on 25%, even 30% margin. In the later series 6, and the season that we have shot, just season 7, the deals that were done were all 40% margin plus. So that has to tell you something about where you need to be. Particularly with commercial property vendors, they're all ears to listening to creative offers. By creative offers, I'm talking about option agreements, maybe lease option agreements, delayed completions, offers subject to conditional exchanges, delayed exchanges. You can be as creative as you like. When you see commercial property is rather unique for several reasons. But think about for sale signs on residential property. When you see an estate agent board outside residential property, what do you see? It's either for sale or to let. Those are the only two options. How many times have you been outside a commercial property and you've seen a phone number, a website, and it says all inquiries? What the hell does that mean? That means pick up the phone and pitch them with something. They're open to letting it. They're open to selling it. What the hell is a lease option? Well, I'm letting it for a period of time and then I'm going to buy it. You know, it's the only property class where they tell you on an estate agent board that they're open to creative offers. You know, it's lovely. And everything that you may have heard about creative deal structures was born in the commercial property space. Commercial property, land development, that's where all these strategies were born. And people have tried to take them out of the commercial space and apply them to residential, but their natural home is with commercial property, and they're much easier to do. What I would always look to do is make sure, just get in and out of the deal quickly. Don't want to spend 3-4 years doing these damn things. Get in and out quickly. So that means look to get your profit and your margin and your exit based on implementing permitted development works only. Yes, you could get planning to do an extension here or this there or whatever, but leave that. Just get in and out, refinanced, cash flow positive based on doing PD work alone. That will be best for your long-term wealth generation. Remember one thing. People come on Property Elevator and they say, oh, this deal's 30% return, but it's going to take 3 years to do. That's 10% per year. Someone rocks up with a PD deal and in a 30% return, and you're out at the end of 12 months. Which one would you do if you were an angel investor on that show? So in and out in the quick space of time, it minimizes your exposure to risk as well. You know, a lot of people do this stuff and they look to sell the units on, and that's fine, that does work. But I'm a big fan of repurposing commercial buildings and keeping them as long-term investments. There's several reasons for that. If I want to build under planning permission 4 apartments from the ground up, the council will say, I've got to have a dwelling mix. They'll say, we need, you know, a mixture of 3 beds, 2 beds, 1 beds, and all of that sort of stuff. With permitted development, the developer chooses what mix of dwellings to build. So we are one of the planning apps we're working on at the moment is for an office to 18 flats. Now, if that was done under planning permission, the council will say, we want a mix of flats. But because we're going to keep this building for long-term rental, all those 18 flats are going to be one-bedroom flats, because that is the optimum for rental. So therefore, our rental yield is going to be very, very strong. So you can't build a block of 18 one-bedroom flats under planning permission. So the yield on it is so valuable. Why would you want to sell it? You know, it makes sense to keep it as a yield-based investment and finance it that way. Exit finance, once it's all fully let, 65% LTV, fix your rate for 5 years. The holy grail is no money left in, but we are achieving anything between 3 and 10% typically in terms of money left in the deal after refinancing. But with the money you leave in the deal, I'm looking at two things. One, as I mentioned earlier, is the percentage return on that money that I've left in. And if I am leaving any money, how long do I get them? How long do I have to wait before I get the money paid back through positive cash flow? And typically it's about 2.5 to 3 years, which is, I don't think is too bad. Then effectively the building's free. I think it's the best way to create long-term wealth. It's the best way to create positive cash flow. Once you have recovered the money that you've tied up in the building, you've basically got an infinite return on your money, which really is the holy grail of property investing. And I think now is the absolute right time to rinse and repeat this strategy. Another reason to keep the deal short and focused and rinse and repeat as many times as you can, because I think we've got 3 years or so of a very, very window of opportunity for doing this. With anything commercial, I think the margin of error is simply not there. A lot of people can get exposed and lose their shirt. So it's unlike residential property where you can chance it and you'll probably make a profit, and if you just sort of try to figure it out as you're going along. The risk of getting it wrong, and by wrong losing a lot of money, is very, very high with commercial. So it's very, very important to get yourself educated. As I said, I've got a list of 500 plus banks. I love bank buildings, particularly the big four banks, the HSBCs and the NatWest and all of that. They're normally because they were the clearing banks, and they were normally at the heart of any high street. They normally looked solid, their stone frontages and quite beautiful, because they had to look solid and secure. And they were the places where all the trading businesses in the area would take their cash takings at the end of the day. So they had to give that feeling of security. So as a result, those banks tend to be very well located on a high street pitch. And remember, when you're looking at retail, there may be a couple of shops empty at the fringes of a parade, but there's always appetite for investing where the most, or renting a shop where the most footfall is. And the big four banks in particular had their locations where the most footfall is on that high street. So generally I find you'll always rent those sort of units. I do some training on commercial property. I have an 8-week commercial property course, tells you all you need to know for not just residential conversions, but commercial property, buy to let, and investing and profiting through SaaS and pension investment as well, which you can find out more information on my website or with the code. You can contact me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and even on TikTok. I'm on now, and that's really about it. That's all I have to say. Hope that's been useful.
Yeah, very much so. Thanks so much. I didn't know you were on TikTok. No, that's kind of, you're more advanced than some of the kids on the phone, on the call. So right.
I'm not doing any songs and dance yet. But...
Oh, right. Okay. I've seen you dancing on stage, so don't never say never. Thanks so much for today. I got a full page worth of notes. So yeah, that was really cool and useful. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming and sharing all of that. And it's quite timely actually with the permitted development change, just earlier this month and the other things you were sharing. So let me have a look through some of the questions. When you said they removed the occupancy condition, does it mean that you can apply for PD whilst you've got a tenant in there?
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question was, do you know with the still to come items you had, do you have any idea of time scales? More or less, is it seasons?
It is a bit funny. We kind of expected it before the budget, and
Yeah.
I don't know. They've announced it piecemeal, like those 2 changes on the 5th of March.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're hoping imminent. I mean,
Okay.
they're all very logical changes. So I'd be
Yeah, yeah.
surprised if
Okay.
it come through.
Yeah, perfect. Fiona is asking, can you stack those PD rights on a large property where you could do like a rear extension, loft conversion, and as well convert into 2 flats on the PD? Do you know?
Well, it's likely to be, but that hasn't been, the detail hasn't been announced. But if we look at existing PD for residential properties, they're normally on the there's normally wording on there which talks about the original footprint as of 1948 or some arbitrary date like that. So it's likely to be a similar thing. You're unlikely to be able to stack those like that.
Okay, awesome. Well, not so awesome, but that question really, the answer really helps. And Fiona is asking as well, really good question. Where can we find out where this Article 4 has been revoked? Is it the best place? Is it Baker Street or one of your?
There is a good question. I know I did a YouTube video on it not so long ago, where I talked about exactly which areas and all, and I shared a link, but I can't remember.
We'll find it. So you went through these 18 areas as well as this one area where it was revoked as well.
Yeah. I shared the link. It's on a government website. There is a YouTube. If you go on my YouTube channel and search, look at the most recent videos, you'll see a thumbnail that talks about that sort of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, lots of people are looking for their checkbooks as well. That must have been quite interesting. And someone asked, what do you do about the cash vault in the banks?
Oh, that's a good one. Depends. What you've got to do is look at the leases. Now, HSBC, for example, all the leases I've seen for HSBC, the bank is responsible for removing the vaults at the end. With Barclays, for example, the leases I've seen with Barclays, none of them are. So it depends. So then that means you have to pay for it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If the bank is responsible, there's normally something called, at the end of the lease, you do a dilapidations claim, and that will be included in there. So it depends on the lease. Everything is determined on the lease with the bank.
Interesting.
Generally speaking, a lot of banks owned these properties freehold, and they did sale and lease back. So because they did sale and lease back, they wrote the lease. Right. So the lease is often favorable. Well, there are 2 schools of thought. Some of the leases are favorable in the bank's favor, but also some of them were favorable in the tenant's favor in terms of rents, because it overvalued the capital asset and meant the bank could realize more for selling the freehold. So it all depends on the lease. From a practical measure, you've got to decide. I mean, we've got one building in Stoke Newington, which was a former HSBC, and that has been there for 80+ years. And the thing with that one, it's got a vault in the downstairs basement area, but the way it's been built is that's part of the floor for the ground floor. So the practicalities of moving it is just not worth bothering.
Interesting. So you make a feature of it. Bike storage, very secure bike storage.
Yeah. Or just simply not use it.
Yeah.
It'd be easier to just not use it. So it's horses for courses. Another side, the vault was on the ground floor, and it was easy to bring a digger from the rear to just sort it out. So it kind of depends. There's horses for courses, whether it's worth getting rid of or not.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ranjan. Fiona, we've got Tim giving some really cool feedback. So that was absolutely brilliant. Thanks, Ranjan. So much learning in such a short space of time. Top quality, Ranjan. Thank you. And quite a few really nice feedback. So Dan Norman here, fab stuff. Ranjan and Guillaume, thank you very much. Kate is asking, what are the current build costs for conversion per square meter, square foot, for in a range of high spec, low spec in different areas? Do you sort of see within your mentoring programs, like what are your students up to? What do you do, and what sort of range of price per square meter do you get for these conversions?
Yeah, it depends wildly. I mean, it's typically between 50 and 80, 85 grand per flat. And it depends on lots of things. So it depends on, because when you are looking at a building, if it's a newer building, it'll be less to convert than an older building. An older building will have load-bearing walls and all of that. With a office building, for example, you tend to have clear open floor plates. So it's just a matter of strip out and put a few studs up. If it's an older building, you've got chimney breasts to remove, load-bearing walls to deal with, and all of that. If it's an older building, you've got a roof to sort out. A project at the moment, you know, I mentioned they're stripping out on one of our projects this week. I went down to site, and after strip out, you can see some daylight through the roof and some tiles and things, and rotten roof rafters that need to be sorted. So with the there are three areas of cost. There is building repair, which is specific to each building. There is then the cost of making a clear open floor plate, getting rid of load-bearing walls and all of that sort of stuff. And then there's the cost of conversion. So if you look at new build, for example, with the new build, the cost of doing your footings and getting up to DPC level is unique to each specific site, ground conditions, slope of the land, all of that sort of thing. Once you've got to DPC level, it's cost per square foot. It's pretty predictable. With conversions, you've got building repair and water tightness, which varies building to building. And then you've got cost of making a clear open floor plate. After that, it's pretty predictable. In terms of, you know, when you deal with lower value areas where GDVs are a little bit lower, you really want to go for newer buildings, because newer buildings already have cavity walls and easier to insulate and conform to all the standards. So cheaper than older buildings. Older buildings are better in higher value areas because the GDVs work, but in lower value areas, you really need to be doing newer buildings. So it varies. That's why it varies. And also there are things like site access issues. If you can't get a skip in the back, then what do you do? Are you on a main road? We did one where the unit was right in front of a zebra crossing. So the zebra crossing obviously has, you know, the zigzags either side, and those pedestrian railings on the pavement either side of the zebra crossing. So what do? You have to wait and load early in the morning, van halfway down the street. That adds a good 10% to the cost of the job in getting materials to the site and all the rest of it. If it's if the building is part tenanted. So the unit we're doing at the moment is the ground floor shop is tenanted. Another unit we're doing, the ground floor shop is open. So they can put all their material, it's vacant. So in that one, they can use the ground floor shop for all their material deliveries, waste and all of that. In the other site, the shop is trading. So that adds a cost. So it depends, is what I'm saying. What I've tried to share with you is some of the things that it depends on.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Certainly some things we don't always think about. If we used to do resi conversions, is indeed this making the clear floor plate and things like that. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. And then the access, which is more of an issue in the high street than if you are doing your HMO conversions on a semi-detached property somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. Rebecca is asking a very optimistic question. Can you change from C1 to C4 on the PD? Or will that ever be permitted?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything in consultation papers. I mean, I keep my eye on consultation papers. When there's a consultation paper out, I also usually put out a YouTube video and I show people how to contribute to that consultation paper. Because people that contribute to the consultation papers are usually NIMBYs. And I say, look, this is the link. Get on there and say, yes, we want it. Yes, we want it. Yes, we want it. Submit.
Yeah, you're rallying the developer troops
Yeah, exactly.
to contribute to this thing. Yeah, you actually do. Yeah. Awesome. So lots of really good feedback. Again, great presentation. Thank you, Ranjan. So much new opportunities. Very informative session. Couple of questions. What's the percentage of what percentage of space do you allow for communal spaces when you do a multi-unit commercial to resi conversion? So I'm guessing is it like from a gross area to what do you allow?
As little as possible. It's hallways and landings. You should just factor in 10% as a rule of thumb. But they are, but you should also try to think outside of the box. We've done a few projects where we have done access from the rear, but built a metal external staircase to get access to the upper floors. So that helps magnificently for a couple of reasons. One, you don't have to have, by the way, if you do a metal staircase, that's subject to a full planning application. So you do your PD first and then chance say, and if you can't be seen from the main road or it doesn't affect anyone or there's already metal staircases at the rear, that can be a good, that should get through. So when you do your metal staircase, what does that give you? It first of all means that you are not using up valuable space at the front of the shop, which means that zone A space is there to rent because you don't have to get in through the front of the shop. And it also means that internally, you don't have to give up 10% space for hallway, stairs, landings. It's all outside, it's in free air. So that's where I've really maximized. Done a few like that where we've been lucky enough to get the external staircase. You go straight to the first floor. You don't have to cut a hole through and waste space internally. So it can be zero, is what I'm saying. I've done developments where I've given up zero internal space to access, and it can be as much as 10%.
Thank you. Somebody's asking, with SIL liability, is this based on the whole conversion or only the residential area? I'm guessing this is in the case where you keep a commercial element to the conversion.
You don't pay SIL on PD. That's on planning.
Is it not because if you create multiple dwellings, is it not, does it not? No?
If you were to create dwellings under planning, yes.
Oh yeah, on there you're right, because it's PD, you don't okay. But I thought it was, yeah, okay. But I thought it was because of a change, if there is a change of use or something, but yeah, you're right. Kate, with the office conversions, does the office has to be in a residential area, or if the building is located in the business park, what would count against while applying for PD?
I think with PD is now more flexible than ever. And just because you can do something, you have to ask whether you should. Because who will rent it if it's not in a residential area? You're just creating a slum. And you ain't going to get the optimum value in rental or capital appreciation and all of that. The other thing is, you've got to remember with business parks is that you can get the permission from the council, but you won't get the permission from the ultimate freeholder. There will be some kind of covenant in a business park that requires you to pay for the communal roadways in that area, and they'll restrict what you can do with it as well.
So Dixit is asking, with the new PD on converting multiple flats, houses in multiple flats, I think the question was already covered earlier. It's unlikely. So these are the details of it have not been detailed, but Ranjan said earlier.
We don't know at the moment, and I think what they'll do is they'll come up with an arbitrary date at which time whatever extensions need to be in place. But what you will, and that will deter people, or that what they don't want to let people do is do a bunch of new extensions and then split. So I think they'll come up with, my guess is they'll come up with some arbitrary date, 2020 or something. As long as it was in place by then, you're good to go. That's my guess.
Okay, thanks a lot. Raul is asking, and this I'm not quite sure I understand, but you might, Ranjan. Does the water neutrality rule apply for the change of use for Class E to C via PD?
Yes. There is.
So what's that? So for me, who don't understand what's the water neutrality.
It's just about proving that you're not using up too much water over and above it, and all of that sort of stuff. But you get people to do those calculations, and it's all about measures that you can put in place, like harvesting rainwater and using it in the flush and all of that sort of stuff, where that applies.
Awesome. Well, Ranjan, thanks so much. Do you have a closing sort of sentiment for today? Something you want to leave us with before we wrap up?
I think just to say that what I tend to do, I've been doing property now for since 1990. Every 6-7 years, I find the game changes a little bit, and what I've always tried to do is be ahead of the curve and make hay when the sun shines on a new opportunity. And very much, I believe that this is one of the best opportunities I've seen in my entire career of investing in property, simply because of the amount of supply and the pricing of commercial real estate. Just look at last week's Allsop commercial auction and see the results, and compare that to a couple of years ago, if you want to see what I mean by that. And the fact that we got more PD rights for conversion than ever before. It's a perfect opportunity.
Ranjan, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining us on today's Deal Finder Corner. So do check out the free resources that Ranjan's got on in Succeed in Property website. If you're not already subscribing to the Ranjan's YouTube channel, you should. There's all things related, anything new coming up in property. Is the biggest property related channel and the most serious, in the country. So yeah, do check it out. Do check out also the next date for the Baker Street Property Meet if you're in London, or it's well worth driving or doing, committing to travel just for the day. It's a great meeting, the biggest one in the country, one of the longest standing ones. So don't miss out. Be part of this amazing community that Ranjan has built. In the meantime, visit propertyfilter.co.uk, log on to your PropertyFilter account, check out the deal blueprint where you define your Goldmine area, engage with motivated sellers, assess properties in seconds, load your pipeline and make deals, have an endless supply of deals, join the top 1% and become a high achiever deal finder. I hope you enjoyed today's Deal Finder Corner like I did. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great week. And until then, happy deal finding. Ranjan, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you for the feedback as well, Ranjan. You've got lots of love in the chat. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.